Riverside.
Welcome to Dance Talk with Joanne Carey, where the dance world connects, the conversations inspire, and where we are keeping them real. I'm your host, Joanne Carey, and today I'm joined with Sandra Rivera. She's a dancer or choreographer, an educator, a writer, and recently she's involved with Dances for a Variable Population. Sandra has a wide variety of things she has done in her career. I'm anxious to talk about lots of them. And before we talk about Dances for a Variable Population, so I'd like to welcome Sandra to Dance Talk. Thank you for joining me today, Sandra.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, especially on this hot summer day, right? It's hot out there. So what I'd like you to do, if you would you take us back to the beginning of your career? Because you have such a beautiful, lengthy career. Could you tell everybody how you started in dance? Begin with perhaps where you're from, where you were brought up, and all those types of things that my listeners like to learn about my guests.
Well, I was brought up and raised in New York City. When my parents came from Puerto Rico, they settled in an area called East Harlem. And that's where I was raised. And that was where I was actually first exposed to dance. There used to be a movie house theater called the Cosmo Movie House Theater. And my parents used to take my brother and I to see movies. And one of the people that I fell in love with was somebody named Lola Flores. And Lola Flores was a very popular performer from Spain. And she did like dances in the flamenco Spanish style, and she sang. She was very dramatic. And I wanted to do that. Also watching musical movies on TV as well. And my mother found her way to the Tina Ramirez School of Spanish Dance. And that's where I started my formal dance training with her. I was about, I would say, like 11 years old.
Okay.
And then when Tina started Ballet Hispanico in 1970, I was one of her original dancers.
Very nice. Very nice.
So, and then from there, I was with the company for about 15 years. And I also did educational work with them. That was where I started my educational work. We did a lot of touring. We did the Joyce season a number of times. And when I left the Ballet Hispanico, I stayed teaching, mostly in their community programs. Then I found my way to Carla De Sola, who's a liturgical dance pioneer.
Yes, I'm very interested to talk about that. So I want to circle back, continue what you're talking about. But when I read that, I thought, I want to dive into that. But continue saying, and we'll go back to that.
So how did I find my way there? There was somebody named Teresa Maldonado who had trained at Ballet Hispanico and eventually ended up dancing with Martha Graham. But before she did that, she danced with Carla De Sola, the Omega Liturgical Dance Company at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. So I go into the studio. It's in the crypt of this incredible cathedral. And there I meet Carla, and I say that she mentored me. I started dancing with her company, and dancing in the cathedral was just like awesome. It was just like incredible. And one of the highlights was dancing the Blessing of the Animals, where they bring animals into the cathedral. And when Carla left to go to San Francisco, she relocated. I in charge of the company, and there I was, the first time directing a company, choreographing. And when I did the Blessing of the Animals, there's like 5,000 people in the cathedral. And what I love about that particular service is that the dancers are the first ones that welcome the people. They're all over the aisles. We teach the congregation gestures. So there I went, and I was ready. I was very busy, and I look out, and it was just like
Wow.
overwhelming. I was like almost speechless, but I had practice, and I was ready to go. And then I had also done a lot of flamenco with,
Hmm.
Tina Ramirez, modern dance. And then I got an opportunity to choreograph for the cathedral. And I had a number of concerts that I did, in particular for Holy Week.
Oh, how nice. Hmm.
And, that lended itself. That was another wonderful
Yeah.
experience. Um, and I kept teaching. What else? I'm just trying to think of. I and I'm still doing that kind of work at
Good.
Riverside Church. It's very interesting. I One of the dancers that I worked with in one of the churches, Middle Collegiate Church in
Hmm.
East Village, Adrian Thorne, is the first Black female minister, head
Okay.
minister
Hmm.
at Riverside Church. Um, so there I am again doing what I mean. I really do love to be in these particular
Yeah.
spaces,
Yes.
and then you know what is it, 7 years ago, I think I started dancing with Dances for a Variable Population.
Okay. And so you were doing all these things right now. So you're still doing the liturgical dance as well as dances for variable populations. Is that?
Yes, I had kind of stopped a little bit with the liturgical dance,
Hmm.
sacred dance. And then Reverend Adrian, who herself is a dancer, you may want to interview her.
Yeah.
She danced with Dance Theater of Harlem,
Hmm.
the Rockettes, and then she went to seminary.
Wow.
And now she's like the senior minister at Riverside Church. It's a
How
big.
interesting. Wow. Yes. Well, I want to go back a little bit on a couple things. First, when you were talking about when you were growing up, that you used to watch movies, and that was how I used to watch movies with my dad, and I loved all that singing and dancing, and that's how I started. Like he must have piqued my interest, and he had music on all the time. My dad was always singing, and whistling, I should say, more whistling than singing to his music. And I just loved that. And that was my introduction too. So when you said that, that just brought me back for a moment with my dad. But also, I want to talk about, before I dive into the sacred dance, is, being a founding member of Ballet Hispanico. What a legacy. For listeners who aren't aware, Ballet Hispanico is world renowned now. Like so many dance companies, they start small, correct? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they
Yes,
start small. But it has grown, from what I've read. I believe it's been on several different continents. It's performed on, I think, in all 50 states, if I'm not mistaken. So tell me what that was like. Did you realize at the time? So often we don't realize that something is going to grow to that magnitude. We hope perhaps that it will, but did you realize when you were a part of that it was going to be what it is today? Or were you just doing the work because you love the work?
you know, uh, the founding members. For instance, I was 17 when I started. Dancing professionally, but I had been doing other kind of community work. But when Tina started, she was like it was like nonstop. Even when we were training as children,
Mhm.
there was always a very strong professional aspect to it. Like she would say things like, I don't know, if you were in line and you kind of scratch yourself, she would go, "Professional dancers don't do that." And it was
Yeah.
like finally one day I was like, "What do you mean by a professional dancer?" Because she kept saying it, and she was like surprised that somebody had asked, because she would say this all the time and nobody would ask. So anyway, she said, "You do your best. You're in the theater. Dee, 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 dee. Professional dancers get paid to dance." And I thought, wow, I was really impressed. But so when she started the company, we had that professional thrust, and we were pretty successful early on. I don't know if you're familiar with the Delacorte Dance Festival.
Yes, I am.
So the second year of the company, 19, 72,
Mm-hmm.
we were invited to perform in the Delacorte Theater, which was like,
Wow.
that was like a phenomenal experience. And we did a lot of performances around the city, and it was always very much like we knew who we were performing for and about.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to get work, I once asked Tina, well, why were we doing all those hospital shows? And she said, well, because they're the ones that hired us.
Yeah.
So, and then pretty early on as well, 73, I guess, 72, we started touring around the country.
Wow.
And I remember the first place we went to was Texas, where we met a lot of Mexican Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And us dancers from Ballet Hispanico, we were, for the most part, came from Puerto Rican backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very interesting to see another group of Latino
Mm-hmm.
community. And
At that time too, right? At that time, so different from today, right? Talk about that. Yeah.
and we were, so it was just very interesting to see how they reacted to us and how we reacted to them. And it wasn't till like 2 years ago that I realized here we are, because the repertory, Tina wanted to have a contemporary dance company, but also with Latino dance forms. So one of the first dances that we did was Fiesta in Veracruz,
Okay.
which is a dance, Baile Folklórico de Mexico, the folkloric dance company
Oh,
from
okay.
Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
One of their dancers did the piece on us. So we were doing this kind of like, it was very theatrical, but it was based on Mexican folk dance. And there was another dance, the deer dance. And it occurred to me about last year, I go, here we were doing these dances to a Mexican American audience. That Tina had the nerve to be doing that. I never even thought about that because,
Right.
these movies that I used to see, it wasn't only just Spanish movies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the movies were coming from Mexico.
Okay.
And the movies they always sort of ended the same. A big Mexican dance, the ladies in the beautiful costumes,
Mm-hmm.
and the singing. So to actually go and be in some of these places when we were touring, it was really wonderful to see a different Latino
Yeah.
community and just a regular non-Latino community that we were representing Hispanics was
Mm-hmm.
something that was very much that Tina, obviously she started the company Ballet Hispanico, but that was like really important. And the shift between, we did a lot of Spanish flamenco
Mm-hmm.
dances, right, in the beginning. But then before we knew it, within a year or two, we were already doing modern dances. Tina, it was just like she had her professional background on Broadway,
Mm-hmm.
theater. She was able to bring in, like, there was a woman, Lee Theodore, who was the original Anybody's on Broadway. And
Wow.
she did a jazz piece on us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we worked a lot with Tally Beatty,
Mm-hmm.
which is another very interesting relationship with the
Mm-hmm.
African American choreographers. They were the ones that were doing a lot of some of the more significant work early
Mm-hmm.
on, because had already mixed with the Catherine Dunham, which
Yeah.
Tina had us. We also studied that technique, that they were able to merge that experience into
Mm-hmm.
a Latino experience. And Tally Beatty, Louis Johnson, they were one of the first ones. What else?
Isn't it amazing when I'm listening to you talk? First of all, it's amazing when I'm picturing like this happening, like groundbreaking happening at the time. But yet, dance just crosses the boundaries, right? It really, dance and the arts just, wherever you come from, whatever your background is, it just crosses the boundaries and brings people together. I feel, and I don't know if you feel that way, but it's a
Yes.
beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, right? Yeah.
Like, I wrote an essay on this experience of being this young Puerto Rican child going to Spanish dance school. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I use that term more than flamenco because Spanish dance is a variety. It's
Mm-hmm.
the folk dances. It's the classical la escuela bolera. It's the flamenco, and then it becomes also this venue for composers to do music, and then they contemporize um, the Spanish dance. But what was I going to say about Spanish? So when I was growing up, we didn't have like I don't know if you're familiar with bomba plena.
Mm-mm, no, I'm not.
It's an Afro Puerto Rican
Maybe if
dance.
I saw it, I would say, oh, I
Okay.
didn't. I know that was called.
And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we grew up dancing salsa in the household. It wasn't called salsa then. So what? And coming from this migrant experience, where you didn't always feel accepted, the same
Mm-hmm.
as today, right? That the Spanish dance allowed us to be seen in the way that we wanted to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
and dramatic and beautiful, with the
Yeah.
costumes. So that was a very important historical aspect of growing up in New York City
Mm.
in a Puerto Rican um, community, because by when I was growing up in the 50s, 60s, the majority of Latinos were Puerto Rican. So
Okay.
we went to this dance school, and that was where we got some of our training. But so those same ethos went into the formation of Ballet Hispanico. And out of the original company members, 12, 9 of them trained with Tina as
Oh,
children. So we had that already. And
yes.
so that you can still see it in the company, some of the aesthetics, the
Mm-hmm.
original aesthetics of the company, that it was important to claim our pride,
Yes.
to
Yes.
express our pride.
Yes.
Uh, and we did go to another big one, was the first time the company went to France.
Okay.
That was 1978.
That is big to go, especially in the 70s, right? To go and what was that experience like?
It was very interesting because we hadn't been to like other places where people were foreign, and to see them also appreciate what we were doing was very interesting and affirming
Mm-hmm.
to see that. Trying to think what other, and we also went a few times to California. Again, there we were meeting a lot
Mm-hmm.
of Chicanos, um, going on tour like the first. Well, and I don't know how Tita did this. It must have been like the second or third year. We got 3 weeks in the Kennedy Center. We did a
Wow.
lecture jam, 2 days, two performances, 5 days a week,
Wow. That's big. That's big.
and then we would rehearse after
Mm-hmm.
doing these performances, and always take our ballet class.
Wow. And to be part of that, I mean, congratulations to be part of that whole historical founding of a company. I mean, what a big deal that is. And then from there, when you started, were you still with Ballet Hispanico when you started doing the sacred dance, or had you left Ballet Hispanico? How did that transition?
After I left Ballet Hispanico, I started doing some their community programming.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Primeros Pasos, which translates to first steps.
Oh,
I would
okay.
go into the schools and create curriculum, dance curriculum for uh, these schools. But I never stopped dancing. I always, kept
Mm-hmm.
dancing. And I actually started going back to flamenco. I started
Mm-hmm.
taking class.
Which is so
Uh,
beautiful. Flamenco is so beautiful. I love to watch that.
and I found my way to somebody, Jose Molina, Mariano Parra, Luis Montero. We used to rehearse in this really dumpy place. It was like 47th Street and 8th Avenue. It doesn't exist anymore because it was the only place that they would allow flamenco dancers and tap
Go to
dancers.
the
And
floor.
so I started doing more flamenco. And how did you? Oh, I started working on my own choreography.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, what something that kind of guided me was that I said, the thing about Alvin Ailey's Revelation is that you don't have to be African American, you get that experience.
Yes.
So I realized that the spirituality of a community is very important. I was raised Catholic. So kind of bringing those two together, I started going back to church, even though I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore, but I went back to church and I met my husband, St. Paul the Apostle Church. And I started choreographing, and it was a very safe space, these churches, to perform.
Yeah.
Because they weren't critical. They just loved, well, for the most part. Sometimes they did not like that. So I started enjoying that. I thought, yeah, there should be dancers, in these sacred spaces. I mean, I think part of the thing about Ballet Hispanico, the Omega Dance Company, was that we were a part of this dance revolution of the 70s. We were surrounded by, Twyla Tharp,
Yes.
Cunningham, Martha Graham, and it was just bursting out in the scenes, Alvin Ailey.
Yeah.
So I wanted to continue to dance, but I found that choreographing, creating work in a sacred space was very appealing and very satisfying. And around that time, my friend Teresa Maldonado was dancing with Omega, and I went to see the company at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, which was wonderful. It was for Holy Thursday, like 10 o'clock at night. Because this was, when you were at the cathedral, it was like the person that headed it, Reverend Morton, the dean, he just loved the arts. So he would just like, he would have this thing on Good Thursday where all the artists were invited to do something. And Carla De Sola used to have this wonderful concert integrating dance and the community. And I found that very appealing is not the word. I loved it. So I met with Carla, and she's down in the crypt, and she would have like these embodied prayer, which I just fell right into it. It was just like, I think you would like it too. It was just like, we take a text and we move to it, and we
and was it a biblical text? Was it a song, like a hymn? What was the text that she would use?
For the most part, she would use biblical, but it was just like whatever she considered sacred, or if she was working on a particular theme. Rumi.
Okay.
Very progressive, she was interested, she's still alive, interested in interfaith. So, and the crypt, it was like, I think the only place in New York, it doesn't exist now, but it was a space that was in a crypt, and her husband, Arthur Eaton, who was a member of the cathedral, I don't know, he got in contact with the dean, and they allowed them to go into this space to create. And this beautiful dance studio was, he constructed it for the most part, put up the mirror. And that was what I walked into. And we did like I said, the blessing of the animals. Then we had another.
Which let me just stop you for just a second. For anyone listening who may not know what the blessing of the animals is for the Feast of St. Francis of Assisi, every year churches worldwide will bless the animals, and you can bring your animal to church. It depends on where they do it. Some do it outside, some do it in the church, some do it outside. It's more outside now, at least in my neighborhood. And you bring, people literally line up to have their animal blessed, which is, I think, amazing. And the blessing itself, I think, is really quite beautiful. But to see all the people coming to have their animal blessed, I think, is an amazing, amazing thing. So talk about what that piece of choreography was like, or what you did for the blessing of the animals.
Well, I originally started as a dancer, and we rehearsed for about, I want to say, like 3 weeks. And it was with Paul Winter music. He had composed a piece for this mass, and it was quite stunning, because here we are in this famous
cathedral,
huge cathedral, and we start off running all around the dancers are running around the aisles, connecting the space, greeting the who's ever there. So it was really an embodied experience. And we did about 3 pieces. And one of the pieces was Santus, and it's water. This is the one that's like the theme is water and the animals. So the first choreographer for the Santus was Paco Garcia.
Okay.
And he passed away from AIDS, unfortunately. Then Alan Tung, he choreographed it. And then this is so sad. Alan also died of AIDS.
Oh, okay.
And then when I took it over to reconstruct the pieces every year, he ended up choreographing the Santus. But the first piece is just like I said, we're running in through the aisles and we're doing like these animals, like the birds, the deer, raven, birds. And that was choreographed, and it's still done today. Well, we don't do it at the cathedral, but it's still Carla De Sola did a beautiful.
Wow. And what were the costumes like, or was it more like
were all white?
White. That's what I picture. It's not. That's what I picture in my head.
So there were about how many? I would say there was like 6 to 8 professional dancers that Carla would have, but for the Earth Mass, she would get an additional 20. So
Wow.
she would reach out. She would reach out to the community, and we would have, and I learned this the second time I was in charge, was to tell people, please bring what you're going to wear. It has to be white, bare feet. And like the first year I left it for the night before, we have this big dress rehearsal with the musicians, and some people bought stuff that was just like
a little over the top.
Yeah. Well, it was just like one person bought like a choir top.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
But anyway, I learned. So the next year it was like, you bring it, your what you're gonna wear at least a week or so or 2 weeks before.
To see.
And then what the amazing thing was, so we do these 3 different dances. The second dance is the Kyrie, with that Alan Tung choreographed. You see the flags, you see these sleeves, because Alan came from he was a contemporary dancer, but he came from a Chinese background. So he used the flags. And again, this whole thing throughout is this thing about connecting to the space. And how does that feel? How does that look when somebody embodies that without making it literal? So we would go from one end of the cathedral to the other, passing, the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
But at the very end, there's this grand procession of the animals, and the dancers would stand on the aisles with these flags, just to make sure that people weren't supposed to take pictures or touch.
Right.
And you have this grand procession of these animals, and in fact, we even had an elephant.
Wow. A real elephant?
A real elephant.
Wow.
We don't do that anymore because nothing happened, thank God, ever. But apparently the elephant that we had used one year killed somebody. I mean, I think it was because the person was not in the cathedral, somewhere being kept. So the cathedral had always been a little worried about that. But anyway, you have more than enough animals. You have the eagle coming in, the goat.
Wow. People must have loved that. The people must have loved that to see.
Fish. And the animals were brought into the cathedral.
Which is amazing.
And the animals would react. You'd have, like the dogs barking, the cats.
Did they read the scripture at all, or was it just a song? Did they read like creation?
It was
the whole
mass.
Oh, wow.
It lasted like 2 hours. 2 hours at least. 2.5.
I bet it was packed. It must have been packed, right?
Yeah.
Packed. That's amazing. Wow. That's I can visualize it as you're talking about it. And then so it's not there anymore. It's what, downtown? Is it held now? A church downtown? Is that what you said?
Well, they still hold the service,
Right, but not the
and another. I think they have another company after the pandemic.
I
Things
see.
kind of changed,
Oh, I see, after the pandemic.
but
Okay.
the Omega Dance Company still exists,
That's
and
what. Mhm.
I think they still do parts of the mass. So, for
Mhm.
instance, this year they did something for Earth Day.
Mhm.
Hopefully, they'll do the way that it was originally constructed. But
Mhm.
in the cathedral, also, it was wonderful. I got to do the flamenco, as I said, and I was there in residence with the Omega Company when September 11th happened.
Oh, wow.
So that was another point that we were able to contribute through
Mhm.
dance when that
Yeah.
happened. We had a concert, months later. So I remember that also very particular
Yeah.
dancing. I took selections from a misa flamenca, and four of us did different laments,
Mhm.
had young girls kind of representing these adult dancers.
Mhm.
It's very powerful.
That is, yes. And so now you are working with Dances for a Variable Population. Can you tell the listeners what that is? What Dancers for a Variable Population is?
It's a big thing.
Yes.
It has different programming. Dances for a Variable Population employs professional dancers that are older for the most part to create. There's a different program. The choreographers, artists, professional choreographers and artists have danced with other
I
companies.
see.
Like this year, we had two dancers that had danced with Paul Taylor.
Hmm.
We have two dancers, Marnie and Ellen Graff, who have been with DVP for many, many years. They're Martha Graham dancers. We've had people that dance with Alvin Ailey, myself with
Hmm.
Ballet Hispanico. So this particular artist, the revival series,
Hmm.
we go into different communities, or they come to us. Like, for instance, Washington Square Park, there's a class. That's where kind of the rehearsals are
How
held.
nice.
I always say her. No, I don't say her wrong. What is it? Naomi Haas,
Okay.
the director and the founder, Goldberg Haas. Naomi Goldberg Haas. She also would create a piece
Hmm.
for this revival series, and she puts it together. This is for a variable population, and people are welcome to come in. You
Hmm.
just,
They're
if you want
free.
to dance,
They're free.
yes,
They're free performances.
performances. We rehearse for from March till June, and like, for instance, I rehearsed at Ballet Hispanico, and this year I was rehearsing at in the South Bronx at God, what is the name of their? This is terrible. Anyway,
That's okay.
a community center there.
Hmm.
It's all very professional, and it's like a variety of dance forms. So, for
Hmm.
instance, I did this year. It was using the theme of what iconic pieces some of us have experienced, like Paul
Oh.
Taylor, his Esplanade. We
Hmm.
didn't do Esplanade, but the choreographers took that as a source of
Hmm.
inspiration. Um, the Graham dancers took something from Martha Graham.
Hmm.
Somebody did something from Alvin Ailey, Alfred, and I did something from Carmen because
Oh,
Tina Ramirez had choreographed to Carmen. So it was
okay.
like these old pieces
Hmm.
that we, professional dancers were able to create new work based on these
And is it put
these
together into one piece, or all those little snippets put together, or they're all separate?
different dances.
Oh, how nice. And so how long of an evening or afternoon of a performance is it?
It's about an hour performance.
Very nice.
And then we also do a workshop. It's all outdoors.
Very
Like
nice.
we did one in Queens in
Hmm.
June, and then we did another one in ay, Grant's Tomb, which is
Wow.
very fantastic. And Naomi, the director, she puts this all together. I don't know how she does it. She
Yeah.
listens to the music, looks at our dances, and she puts this incredible
Wow.
performance in. And it's interesting because you have people that have danced in another life,
Sure, I
as
know.
young people,
Yep.
let's say they've trained, or somebody that's never trained and always wanted to dance,
Oh,
or
that's
always
nice.
wanted to do, let's say, flamenco,
Mm-hmm.
always wanted to do modern dance. So they have a they have a choice of all these different artists.
Wow.
But the other thing that DVP does, it's all year long. They have all this programming,
Okay.
like all these dance classes that takes place in these senior centers
Oh, how
all over the
nice.
city.
That's
And
wonderful.
Brooklyn, Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
Queens, and we go in there and we have these, this program that Naomi has created this curriculum for older bodies
Oh,
and
how
how to
nice.
maintain them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this physical aspect,
Mm-hmm.
like exercise. Then she's also integrated dance,
How
integrated
wonderful.
artistic, creative
Mm-hmm.
dance movement.
So it's very healing. It's very healing for
Yes.
very
And this,
healing.
yeah. And we're also got a big grant for mental health. So we try to end our classes integrate mental health
Mm-hmm.
ideas into to what we're doing. And the classes are, yes, in the centers, but during the pandemic, we had to do everything via Zoom.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And who wanted to do that? But we did it.
Yes, who
And
wanted to?
actually,
We
what
all did
year
it,
was
right?
21? I think it was 21. Was it 21? 20. We actually had our performances online.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yes.
And so these are with the residents. You give go in and give classes to the residents, senior centers. They take the classes.
Yes.
Nice.
But then because of the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
we had to do not only computer, because some people
Yeah.
don't do computers,
Don't
all the
know how.
seniors.
Mm-hmm.
So they did it through the phone.
Wow.
And that still exists, that model. So you have choices of going into the center, doing Zoom class,
Mm-hmm.
or doing a telephone class. And we have a lot of people that are Spanish speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a woman, Marisol, who teaches. I don't think she's the only one. There's probably 2 phone classes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very interesting, because when Marisol was putting this together, she reached out to me to see how this would work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like,
Yeah.
you take your right arm and you extend it out,
Mm-hmm.
bring it up to the
Yeah.
pull in with a fist, open your fingers. Let's take each finger and let's take the big thumb.
Yeah.
It was very
So
specific.
specific, right? So they can because they're only listening, they have to visualize. Wow. What a challenge for a teacher, right?
It was, but it was really kind of spiritual,
Yeah.
because all you're hearing is this voice.
Wow.
The other thing is we use like popular kind of dancing to get
Mm-hmm.
people, like a
Sure,
dance
sure.
party kind of thing. So we're incorporating all kinds of dance or creative, elements, like why am I forgetting this? Like shapes,
Uh-huh.
getting a shape, a
Yep.
curve shape, dynamics. Are
Mm-hmm.
we doing this? We're doing this like strong. Are we doing this like gentle?
Mm-hmm.
Are you extending out? So it gives the participants an opportunity to be creative
Mm-hmm.
with their bodies and not so step bound.
Yeah.
You know, Whereas when we're doing the what I call the revival series,
Mm-hmm.
the performances that we do most of in June and then in the fall, those are more specific and you have to rehearse.
Right.
But yeah,
So
and they
interesting. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. When, I'm watching you on video, some people, will listen to this on audio only. So as I'm watching you move and do some of the movements that you're doing when you're talking about teaching the residents on the phone and explaining everything. It's just how important that is for, I mean, for all of us, but you're talking about a very specific population, the aging population who are lonely, who are sitting all day, perhaps sitting, and while I'm watching you move, it's that visceral reaction, when you're moving, and to give them that experience of what it feels like, if you're extending your arm in a certain way, it might bring back that memory of an embrace, or it triggers feeling of someone hold. And so that is so important for all of us, but for an aging population, when so often they're alone.
Mhm.
They're alone, or they're sitting, you don't want to sit in front of a TV all day with just the sound on, which sadly becomes what happens so often. So what a beautiful program to have, and to be involved in.
And like you're saying, it creates community. I mean,
Yeah.
these community centers offer other programming,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always with the dance, it really creates a sense of community. They like coming in, they like seeing each other,
Yeah. And it's fun. It's fun. Right?
fun. And what was interesting for me was that, as I said earlier, I did a lot of the community outreach programs for Ballet Hispanico
Mm-hmm.
for school, younger
Yeah.
school population. And I was able to bring back, I use that experience because you're dealing with, it's a similar kind of encouraging people
Mm-hmm.
to do things and just being kind of very clear that you want to include them,
Yeah.
that you have faith that they
Mm-hmm.
can do things. I mean, and they're very inspiring. Like this 90-year-old woman, there's a few of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very, like, you could tell the ones that are strong. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she'll come in, "Hi, Sandra, I no puedo. This hurts, that hurts." But she comes, she
Yeah.
comes, and then she'll always say, "I'm glad I came."
Right.
And the whole idea, I got this from somebody, Miranda Esmond. She does, she has a whole program for older bodies. But
Okay.
one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I got from her was her thing about, like, when you're in pain or if something hurts, move. You want that pain, you want it to move away from the pain.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
And for instance, I would go in there, go, okay, go up, 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 go as high as you can, high as you can. Well, some people can't go up as
Mm-hmm.
high as they can, but I learned to say, I want you to go move to some space, a place that your body can do, something that your body can do.
Yes.
And then maybe you could reach a little bit
Mm-hmm.
higher. So it's like being very,
The word choice, right? What words you choose to
yes,
describe, right? Yes.
and being inclusive. It's like we're all in this together. And it's also interesting when people come in and they don't feel as well, that the other participants, they rejoice when they see
Oh,
somebody
that's
break through.
that's nice. Yeah.
I'm not going to move today. And we're going across the floor, like, well, let's say across the floor, moving. And all of a sudden you see this 90-year-old, she's moving too. She can't do it going back and forth, but
Right, right,
she
right.
has to do it. And everybody's going, "Oh,
Yeah.
Josefa, you were so good."
That's nice. That's nice.
And
How about,
then,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
Mhm.
well, that's the class aspect.
Yeah.
But when they perform, they love doing that too.
They
It takes a
perform
lot
as
of work.
well. So the centers have a performance as
What happens is that so we do this program, let's say throughout the year.
well. Mm-hmm.
Then in March, we start rehearsal. So
Okay.
we, not all the centers, but some of the centers are um, participate in the performances. So they get the class and then they get a rehearsal. And, they have to learn how to commit
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and getting them to the rehearsal site. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing we have the professional artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the group of dance teaching artists,
I see.
and they're the glue. They keep us going. They take attendance.
Oh,
The performances. It's like checking to see who's going to be in the bus.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of costumes, but does everybody have their flower? Does everybody
Yeah.
have their sleeve?
Yeah.
So it's a really big community event. So the thing with the dances for a variable population, it's like very inclusive of different the dance population. You know,
Yeah.
you have the professional or the dancers that
Mhm.
are associated with particular dance companies, but then you have the teaching artists go out into these communities.
Yeah. That's nice. I think that's coming up. That free performance is coming up. I have written down September 9th and September 23rd. Is that correct?
No,
No? Okay, because then my notes are wrong. I thought I
it
had
used to be in September. What do you have?
I have written here September 9th and September 23rd. Well, I have a couple. I had that, and then I also have October 5th, October 18th, and November.
Well, what I have,
Well,
what I'm
let's
going
get
to
those
be on
correct for everybody.
is that the Revival 8 series, which is
Huh?
the where we do the performances outdoors, is October 5th at the Yolanda Garcia Park,
Mm-hmm.
and the performance is at 5, and then we have a workshop at 6.
Okay, October 5th. Okay, so
And then October 18th is in Washington Square Park,
nice.
and we reverse. We do the workshop at 4,
Mm-hmm. And then the performance.
and then the performance at 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then November 16th, we are, excuse me, at the Alvin Ailey Theater.
How nice.
Yeah, it's our first year there.
That's exciting.
So we're going to perform at 5. And I don't know how they're doing the workshop at 6 because, it's a theater. So I don't know how they're doing that. But
So that's exciting. And now the outside performances, you have to hope for good weather. What happens if I I don't even want to say it, but is it rain or shine? I guess I should ask.
it's no. If it rains, we,
Is it rescheduled? Oh, rescheduled. Well, that's good. So there's nothing September 9th and 23rd. So that information is incorrect.
no, I don't think so. Unless they have another program that,
That's okay. I'll make sure that when I put this up that I put October 5th, the 18th, and the 16th, so that
and I
people
should,
can come.
the other program that we have is usually takes place around November, December.
Oh, okay.
And again, the professional artists, we go into the centers actually, and we do performances. We do like a version of the Revival series.
Mm-hmm.
We actually go into the communities.
Oh, how nice. Into the centers where you teach.
Yes,
Very nice. Like for the
yes. So we
seniors,
go
for the
in there
okay.
and they get to see, because not everybody can go
And
or is able to go.
that's very
Um,
nice. A lot of service, which I think is beautiful.
oh yeah.
A lot of service, which is so important. I think it's
And
that
before we end, we have a really good website
okay,
that
yes.
gives you, like,
Is that the dvpnyc.org?
yes, and
Yes.
she
Yep.
put W.
w.pnyc.org. Yep. I'll put that also in the show notes too when I put this
And
up.
Facebook, we're all over Facebook.
That's wonderful. Facebook. How about Instagram?
I don't know about that. I
Okay.
guess because I don't do Instagram.
That's okay.
I don't.
Yeah, that's okay. I just so I have the right information to put up for everybody.
But Facebook is great. We have a wonderful Matthew who does
All this all this stuff. Well, what's so inspiring, Sandra, is the longevity that I like to point out to listeners and dancers who are listening, who perhaps are just starting out in their career or mid-career or somewhere in between, that the longevity in dance, right? Here you are, you've had longevity in your career. It changes, right? It changes over the years. And then you find your path of how you can continue to serve the community, serve the dance community, and benefit yourself from dancing. And it doesn't have to end. It doesn't have to end unless you choose to have it end, right?
right.
There's just more and more avenues available. and we continue to be creative in what we can do as dancers. I think that's what's really wonderful about the art form. We continue to always create and be creative and offer that. Sandra, is there anything that I haven't spoken about that you would like to tell the listeners? Any words of wisdom that you can give us?
Before we leave, I got to make sure that the founder of the company is
Yes.
Naomi Goldberg Haas.
Naomi Goldberg Haas.
And she founded the company in 2009.
So it's pretty young still, kind
Yes.
of a young company.
And the mission is to promote strong and creative movement among older adults of all abilities, enabling them to build creativity, improve their mental health and physical health, strengthen social connection, and enhance quality of life. Our artistic vision is to bring participatory dance experiences, participatory and performances to older adults throughout New York City and to train teaching artists to expand our impact across New York and beyond. It highlights, we promote a democratic, interactive, and inclusive vision of dance that highlights the power and beauty of older bodies.
Yes, very nice.
And I'm inspired by what you said a few seconds ago about continuing to dance and move. Like another group that I am involved with is it's a collective that's led by somebody named Amy Kale that I met when I was we would do like feedback sessions. So she's put together a group of us, alterations is a project. But anyway, we go into Fort Tryon Park
Oh,
in New
wow.
York City and we create these dances, of our experience of the park. And I have found that again very satisfying. Like I said, I'm gonna do a dance. In flamenco we have this thing that's called floreo. It's when you in floreo is the part of flamenco where you move your hands
Okay.
circular. It's very floreo comes from the word flower.
I was going to say flower. That's what it sounded like to me. I don't know Spanish,
So
but yeah.
I did this dance with a tree. It was based on my experience of trees, so there I am. I said, we're going to do this performance. Other people did something in front of a rock, another tree. But it was really wonderful this year. We did it a second year. And there I would be in Central Park moving to the street. It was like, well, what are you doing? It's like, and it's like, the awness of trees. We all can see that, have experienced it, where you look at something and you can't describe it. It's just like, what is it that's so incredible? But I caught myself and I got to this point where I would just feel like the depth, the height of the tree. And then like all the other, the
Wow, yeah.
leaves and all that. I would give myself 5 minutes to do this, improvise, but using this flamenco
Sure.
floreo, and I call it dancing a tree. Another avenue for us to explore, to go into nature and just like with the environmental issues that we're having, that's another venue that we can have a voice and contribute to as dancers.
Yes. And just recognizing the beauty of creation and nature, right? I mean, how beautiful is that to teach somebody or show somebody to how to experience it, like you're saying. Like you're saying, you see something and we don't know why it moves us, but then when we start moving and taking that in, we can have that experience. That's what's so beautiful about dance. It touches so many different aspects of life, right? It really, really does. But thank you, Sandra, so much for being a guest on Dance Talk. It's really,
Thank you for having me.
absolutely, it's delightful to meet you and to hear all these interesting things that are going on. I hope everybody goes out and will see these performances October 5th, 18th, and 16th. I will certainly put them in the show notes, but it's really been delightful to have you on as a guest. And I thank all our listeners for tuning in. Remember to follow us, like us, and share. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
by Riverside.